All right, so today we're talking about the best practices for online assessment. If you're not in our department or you don't know me, I'm Judy Breslin, and this semester I am teaching a large course, genetics, and so I'm pretty aware of issues about assessment. And I just want to talk about first to establish that it's really difficult and ineffective to switch paper exams to an online format. And basically, you run into this kind of situation with the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. And here you can see the Roadrunner was running away from the coyote. The Roadrunner stopped right before the cliff. Wile E. Coyote went plummeting past the Roadrunner and is now about to fall, down. And you might think that when you first look at this is like, well, the students are outsmarting us. And that is really true. And when you first look at this, you might think that, God, the students are cheating and they outsmart us when we do exams online. And that is definitely true. But what I really want to get across today is that it's actually kind of the opposite. By doing kind of standard exams, we're almost taking the easy way out. And we're really cheating the students because they're not really engaging in the material. Okay, so let's move from here. Okay, so first of all, why do the old reliable assessment methods work poorly for online assessment? And for many of you, like me, in genetics, half my exams are written problems, the other half are multiple choice. And I have a large collection of multiple choice questions. I've carefully edited them over many semesters. But when you use them online, they are outed. Okay, so what do you mean by that? And so I actually talked to a bunch of students. We had conversations over and over, and I said, would you mind sending me some emails that I could use in this presentation? And they were like, sure. So they are anonymous, but these are definitely current CSOV students. I also don't like the webcam because I take photos of the quiz questions. I do this because knowing how the professor writes questions helps me study for exams, and most professors don't allow viewing of past quizzes. Another quote from a student: it's very easy to cheat, even with lockdown. Many students ask me to be in their group chats for finals or tests. You can also pull up questions on a phone or a separate laptop. And this is even easier if the question is available on Chegg. And you might ask yourself, what is
Chegg?
And here is Chegg. I accessed this Juneteenth. And you can pay, students can pay for this. It is $14.95 per month. So students can pay $14.95 per month. That's a lot less than a textbook. And here I just went in on the free version, and they had some new questions. And one of them was one kind of I'm familiar with, which of the following DNA replication proteins keeps the parental strands separate after being unwound and separated. And this question is so easy to answer. You could easily look at a view in your textbook. You could easily access this online if you just got any image of DNA replication. But instead, the students are going to Chegg. They just want to know what the answer is. They're actually not that interested in. And the answer is the first one, single-stranded binding proteins. And you can tell by the way the person wrote the question, they couldn't use single-stranded in their question. But whatever. But you can see here that students aren't really interested in the content. They just want to find out what the answer is. And so they can go to these websites and find. And you can see here also that clearly this question came, someone took a photograph of a computer screen. And so, if you don't think your questions are going out and you think that by using lockdown, you're hiding things, you're not. The Respondus monitor, which is available through Beachboard. It uses the student's webcam that it views the students while they take the exam. And any movement that the student, kind of excessive movement the student does is flagged. And so if a family member or a pet walks across the room, like a large dog, that can be flagged. Then so faculty can review the images. They see a lot of flags. They can view those images. And even they can search for like, ooh, do their eyes shift? Does it look like they're looking down at their phone or looking to the side to something, or like their other laptop over there? And they can kind of shift, they can kind of search for other suspicious behavior. And I just want to talk about some of the downsides of this, and there's numerous ones. One is for students that have test anxiety, and all of you probably in large classes have numerous students who would take their exams at BMAC, and a lot of them, it's because of test anxiety. And so if they're being watched, you can imagine that for a student who already has test anxiety, this would actually kind of produce overwhelming anxiety. And this is a really important point. Citing overall student privacy concerns, especially those of undocumented students, UC Santa Barbara Faculty Association Board wrote, "We recognize that in our collective race to adapt our coursework and delivery in good faith, there are trade-offs and unfortunate aspects of the migration online that we must accept. This is not one of them." So remember, we have a lot of undocumented students on our campus, and they probably aren't very comfortable, using this Respondus monitor, but they sort of don't have a choice if you require it of them. The other thing I'd like to do is look at this link, and I'm actually just going to go right to this video and show it to you. Here it. Where is it? Wait a second. Hold on a second. We'll just go by the way we were originally supposed to do it. Sorry. Hold on. Okay. All right. Hopefully, can you guys see this, or do I need to switch views?
Switch views.
Yeah. Let me. Do I need to switch views? Let me switch views. Hold on. Just a second. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna play this.
Hi, I'm Shan Wu with DC Student Defense. I want to talk to you today about cheating with Chegg. So a lot of students are being accused right now of taking their online tests, exams, even homework with the aid of an application called Chegg. So I'm here to tell you that it doesn't matter what application or service you're using, the same rules apply. All too often, we're really interested in the newest thing, the newest application, as though somehow that's going to be an exception to the rules. Just like Uber Eats didn't change the fact that we eat food, just how we get it, online services, applications don't change the rules of the exam. You've got to know what the rules are. That's the most important thing. If you know what the rules are, and when in doubt, just ask, then you'll be able to protect yourself. Don't get into the habit of wishful thinking like, oh, this isn't a particular application the teacher mentioned, so then it might be okay. Read the rules and ask. But if even after doing that, you do get accused, you need somebody with experience. Because once you've been accused, everything's different. Then you need someone with understanding of academia to help you analyze your work, rules applied to your test to figure out the defense. Don't make mistakes just trying to do it all by yourself. That's one of the saddest things we see is students who come to us when they try to handle it on their own. Call somebody like us with a lot of experience that can help you defend yourself.
Okay. Okay, so you can see that now there's attorneys that are representing students. So if you use Respondus Monitor solely as a deterrent, students might know that you actually are very unlikely to accuse them of cheating, because for me personally, I don't really want to spend my spring semester defending myself against a lawsuit about cheating. So anyways, I think, all right, so let's see. Here we go. Okay, so so besides this cheating issue, we need to think about how we assess the methods we currently use, especially for large courses. And for me in genetics, I do 2 to 3 midterms and a final exam. And I know in the lower division courses, this is pretty typical. What's that? Okay. So prior to online teaching, we need to realize that these assessments were flawed. They value short-term retention and memorization. And even in genetics, where I teach more difficult problems, I basically teach the students how to solve them. We have a written portion of the exam that they have to answer. I often notice that there's very little retention. And I'm sure many of you have had the experience where you asked a class a question that covered information from the previous exam, or you had a problem that was a synthesis problem, and you might have been disappointed to find that the students literally had no idea what you were talking about. And as you reminded them, they slowly recalled, like out of a deep fog, something that they had mastered on an exam maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they're not really retaining information. And so basically what I'm going to try to argue for you guys today and hope to encourage you to do is use the pandemic as an opportunity to improve assessment. And basically think of, it's one of the silver linings of the COVID-19 pandemic. We can actually finally make the changes in assessment we've been thinking about for a long time. Okay, and so one of the really important things to realize about students, and that until I started doing a lot of reading, which I've been doing kind of the last month, is that whether faculty like it or not, student learning is driven by assessment. You might remember when you were an undergraduate, and many of you, because you're in academics, this probably was the case. It was really fun to learn stuff. You just loved learning. And then, oh, there was a test in the end, but that was kind of just, oh, you had to review stuff and then you took the test, because many of us here just naturally liked learning. But students actually describe all aspects of their study, what they attended to, how much work they did, and how they went about their studying as being completely dominated by the way they perceive the demands of the assessment system. And these are all, the first one is a quote from the Graham-Gibbs document that I uploaded. And the other thing is he describes studies that show the compared courses where there were lectures, students learned from textbooks and took exams, first courses where there was coursework, group discussions, and essays. And in the latter case, he said students construct a lot more meaning from the material. Studies show this. And in fact, if they can retain that information 13 years later, because it was so much more ingrained. And I sort of remember, like when I was in college, I wrote a paper that I had to do a lot of research on Latimeria, and I still remember it. But if you ask me an exam I took, no recollection. So basically students, they're smart. They take a practical look at college courses. They ask themselves, what do I need to do to get a good grade? And here, what we need to understand is the answer to this question is based on the assessment choices made by the teacher. So we can actually use this information to help our students learn. So one thing that's really important is assessment should help students gain attributes that will help in their future careers. I think all of us would agree that when students go to college, it shouldn't just be a bunch of facts that they memorize. We really want them to be gaining skills that will help them in their career. And this is brought out in one of the readings that I mentioned in the reading list by Daryl Thompson. It's a little outdated. He has some web tools that don't even exist anymore, but a lot of the points he makes are really good. And he says, in addition to discipline, knowledge, and skills, graduate attributes or career skills, they include problem solving, interpersonal understanding, critical thinking, written communication, teamwork skills. And I think what we should do is think about some of these. So other attributes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the chat box. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I would like you guys to think about other graduate attributes or career skills that you think we should be teaching in our courses at students when they are done with a biology degree from Cal State Long Beach, that they should have those skills. One of them is finding appropriate and valid sources of information. But let me go ahead, get us back to the chat box. And data and graph interpretations. Yeah, I agree. Course material available through third-party study aid services. Okay, oh God, oof. Honesty, integrity, yeah. Oral presentation skills, oral communication, writing. We'll just try a few more. Data, graph interpretation, persistence, yes. Understand hypothesis testing, understand hypothesis generation, professionalism, what is a prediction, right? Experimental design, right? So what's nice, remember, is that the chat is saved from these meetings. So all of these ideas are out here: experimental design, assessment of information, data interpretation, ability to read scientific papers. We can see there's huge numbers of things. So when we're asking our students to memorize a bunch of stuff for a multiple choice exam, we're not really, maybe data interpretation's a few things maybe, but very few of these are really hard to assess. Respect for others and really wanting to learn. Yeah, wouldn't that be great? We can do all the things that we're listing are all things we can do if we set this as our goal. Apply knowledge to a scenario, integrity, virtue, altruism, grit, yay, okay. All right, so this is great. And this is actually, I'm really happy to see all these really good ideas here. But what I'm really gonna tell you guys today is that we can do this, but it is gonna take some work. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, all right, so here we were. I think I have to go like this, okay. All right, so here's kind of what I'm gonna really focus on today in my different sections. What I'm gonna talk about is to have you guys teach what will be assessed. And I'm just gonna mention here, assess at higher levels of Bloom taxonomy, but I will spare you the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid, okay? Low stakes exams, you can teach at lower levels. Be clear and specific in assessment instructions and expectations. We'll talk about rubrics, authorized, unauthorized information, honor codes. We'll talk about varying assessment, assessing often, providing feedback quickly. We'll talk about using graders in large classes. We're at a unique opportunity this fall where we have money for graders. Again, multiple choice quizzes are okay for low stakes assignments. Educators and these pedagogy experts, they recommend you can use multiple choice quizzes, but they should give immediate feedback. And you also allow students to retake them. They're basically kind of a checkpoint. They're not meant to be, hard. They're more like, you guys, when you take like online sexual harassment, they have multiple choice questions, but you don't necessarily have to get them right. Okay. And increase formative and decrease summative assessment. We'll talk more about that. And what I'm hoping that you'll see by following some of these guidelines is that effective assessment is going to allow our students to become engaged with the material, gain an appreciation of the subject, along with their good grade. So not just become experts at taking multiple choice exams and not shifting their eyes during Respondus Monitor. Okay, so first let's talk about teaching what you're going to assess. And as remember before, we said that students, they design their learning based on assessment. So you should kind of look at the learning objectives that we did in the first week of the FLC, or if you're teaching a lab, look at the learning objectives that are already written by, by other people, if you can't write your own learning objectives. But think about how you will access the learning objective and then prepare students accordingly. So the best way for me to teach is I just give an example, and I'm going to show you an example from my genetics class. And I tried to pick something that everyone is kind of aware of. And here is diagram how genetic information is inherited and reshuffled from eukaryotic parents to offspring by meiosis. So it's kind of the basics of sexual reproduction, the production of gametes through meiosis, how this shuffles information. Okay. And so here's like a good question. This is the kind of problems I've asked in the past. And here a diploid organism has 2 chromosomes, one short, one long. The big A gene is on the short chromosome. The big B gene is on the long chromosome. But now we're going to start with a heterozygous parent, big A, big B, little b, diagram the production of a little b gamete during meiosis. And then for an online exam or online question, I have them draw it, scan it, and upload to Beachboard. And this is a good question. I mean, it takes some thought to do it. There's nothing wrong with this question, but you can actually really improve this question. And here's a better problem. Design and then solve with a drawing of meiosis Design a problem that shows how the alleles of two genes on separate chromosomes will randomly mix during the production of gametes. And you give a hint, Mendel's second law. And then, so that's what, so you sort of decide what, here is my learning objective. And now I've picked how I'm going to assess whether they have understood this learning objective. And so now I think about how I'm going to design the lecture. I'll first, cover meiosis with drawings, and then I'll allow students to get into breakout groups, and it's a big class. I'm not going to be able to visit every breakout group. I've got 180 students, so I've 60 breakout groups, some crazy number. But at least the students are working in small groups, and they're going to try to maybe answer the good problem, the first question I gave them. And then we'll have everyone come back. I'll end the breakout groups. We'll maybe take a poll that kind of evaluates how well they did. And then I might actually draw the problem out and kind of show them how to do it. I'll emphasize the importance of Mendel's second law. So I'm basically totally preparing them for this better problem. And so here, one of the important things is that you really have to be super clear and specific in the assessment instructions and expectations. So what I recommend is do the assignment or problem on your own, and then once you do it on your own, you'll see the problems or issues that kind of come up. So when I went and did mine, that better question, I realized that I really needed to write how the alleles of two different genes on separate chromosomes. Because when I first drew it, I thought oh, they're going to put A genes everywhere. It's going to be a disaster. And so then I realized if I just put two different genes on separate chromosomes, that would really help the students. And it can be, you might have to do bigger changes, but I'm just kind of giving you this example of a more modern change. And I can't see the chat box. It's frustrating. So you really want to ask, what is the quality of the student learning process required to complete this assessment? Okay, so when you think about an assessment, really think about quality. Be critical and remove questions that are tangentially related to learning objective, based solely on memorization, or that when you take them, you can see it's clearly confusing. There's many ways to interpret it. It's just going to create problems. And you want to choose assessments that are valuable to your students, that are going to kind of relate to a lot of those attributes and graduate attributes, career skills that we just listed. What kind of value are they going to gain by completing this assessment? And I think what you're going to find is you're going to have to value quality over quantity. You're not going to be able to ask a lot of these hard questions. You can throw a lot of different concepts into one question, but you're not going to be able to cover as much material. Another critical thing for being clear of your expectations is using rubrics. And on Beachboard, I set up a whole folder with rubrics. There's one, I named it Huge Valuable Collection of Rubrics, PDF. There's a rubric template, and I've got a couple of them embedded in the talk, and I'll post the slide deck later. I finished it 1 second before I started. And here's an example of a problem-solving rubric for a physics class. And there are things about it I like and things I don't like. So if you